used to believe the worst thing that could happen to a woman was losing love. I was wrong. The worst thing is realizing the person you trusted with your future was quietly stealing it piece by piece, while you were standing right beside him smiling, believing, and calling it love. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to stay with me. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and stay until the very end, because what began as my deepest humiliation slowly became the most powerful awakening of my life. I still remember the exact moment my stomach dropped. Not because I knew yet, but because my body felt something my heart wasn't ready to accept. At the time, I thought I was safe. I had just turned 32. I had a decent job, a small flat with creaky floors and stubborn windows, and a savings account I was proud of because every pound inside it represented sacrifice. Late nights, saying no to trips, skipping dresses I wanted, choosing responsibility over indulgence again and again. £50,000 doesn't just appear in a woman's account by accident. It's built slowly, carefully, with discipline and hope. I used to open my banking app sometimes just to look at it, not because I planned to spend it, but because it made me feel secure. Like I had something solid in a world that constantly shifted. And then there was him. I won't say his name. Not because I'm afraid, but because he doesn't deserve to live in my mouth anymore. He came into my life softly. No dramatic entrance. No fireworks. Just warmth, consistency. A calm voice that made me feel like chaos didn't exist when he was near. He listened when I spoke. He remembered small details. He asked about my work, my childhood, my dreams. He told me I was different, that dangerous word we all want to believe. I had been alone for a while before him. Alone enough to miss companionship, but not desperate enough to ignore red flags, or so I thought. He seemed safe, thoughtful, slightly wounded in a way that made me want to nurture him. He told me about his failed business, how a former partner had betrayed him, how he'd lost everything but learned powerful lessons. How he just needed one more chance to rebuild. I didn't fall in love all at once. I slid into it slowly, comfortably. The way you ease into warm water without realizing how deep you've gone. He never asked for anything at first. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Real manipulation is patient. It doesn't demand, it waits. We built routines. Morning messages. Evening calls. Weekends that felt like rest instead of effort. He talked about our future as if it was already agreed upon. Trips we'd take. A home we'd share. The business he wanted to build this time the right way. When he spoke about money, it wasn't greed. It was fear, trauma, caution. Or so I believed. He would say things like, I just want stability. I'm tired of starting over. Or, I never want us to struggle. He made it sound noble, protective, loving. I told him about my savings one night without thinking. We were lying in bed, lights off, voices low. I mentioned it casually, like it was just another fact about me. I didn't notice how quiet he became after that. I didn't notice how. Over the next few weeks, his conversations began orbiting around security, investments, opportunities, low-risk ventures he'd researched extensively. He never pushed, never rushed. He simply planted ideas like seeds and let my trust water them. I started doubting myself before I ever doubted him. When he first suggested I invest with him, not give, not lend, but invest, I laughed it off. He smiled gently and said, of course, I'd never want you to feel pressured. And that sentence alone made me feel safe enough to reconsider. He showed me documents, charts, projections, emails. He spoke with confidence but never arrogance. He answered every question patiently. I remember thinking, if he wanted to scam me, wouldn't he be pushier? Wouldn't there be cracks? What I didn't understand yet was that the most effective lies feel like your own ideas. I transferred the first amount small. Just a test. He celebrated it not with excitement, but gratitude. Told me how much it meant to him. How proud he was of us. The returns came quickly. Or at least, what looked like returns. Numbers on a screen. messages confirming progress. That's when the trust locked in. Over months, the amounts grew, slowly, carefully, always with my consent. Always after reassurance. Always wrapped in love and shared vision. I told myself. I was smart, educated, cautious. I told myself women like me don't fall for scams. I didn't fall for a scam. I fell for a man. By the time the full £50,000 was gone, it didn't feel like theft. It felt like partnership until the night I tried to withdraw a small amount, just a little, for something mundane. A home repair. I didn't even warn him I wanted it to be simple. The app froze, then logged me out. Then rejected my credentials. I remember staring at my phone, heart suddenly racing for no clear reason. I told myself it was a technical glitch. That things like this happen. I messaged him casually. No reply. Minutes passed, then an hour. Then the small voice inside me, the one I had silenced for months, finally screamed. I tried calling. It rang once, then voicemail. Again and again. By the time morning came, my hands were shaking so badly I spilled coffee all over the counter. I hadn't slept. My thoughts were spiraling in circles. I couldn't slow down. I logged into my email. There was one new message from a bank I didn't recognize. That was the moment the ground disappeared beneath me. I won't describe every detail of what followed, not yet. Some truths arrive slowly, like dawn. Others strike like lightning. This one did both. What I will tell you is this: by the end of that week, I knew I had been deceived. I knew my money was gone. And I knew the man I loved never existed the way I believed he did. But here's what I didn't know yet. I didn't know how deeply this betrayal would break me. I didn't know how quietly I would suffer. And I certainly didn't know that this loss, this humiliation, was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. Because when a woman loses everything she worked for, she doesn't just grieve. She changes, and that change, that comes next. Asterisk, the moment you realize everything you trusted was a lie. Something inside you goes very quiet. Not loud, not dramatic. Just silent. Like the world has stepped back and is watching to see what you'll do next. If you're still here with me, thank you. Please like this video, subscribe, and stay until the end, because what I'm about to share isn't just about loss. It's about what happens after the tears dry and the truth finally settles into your bones. After that email, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse the way movies tell you people do. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, staring at a future that suddenly felt hollow. I tried calling him again. Straight to voicemail. I messaged. Nothing. I checked his social media. Gone. Every trace of him erased. That's when the reality began to sink in. Not as panic, but as shame, because the first thought wasn't, how could he do this to me? It was, how could I let this happen? That question haunted me far more than the money. I replayed every conversation, every smile, every late night promise. I searched for cracks I might have missed, signs I ignored. I blamed myself for being hopeful, for being kind, for believing that love could still be honest in a world that rewards deception. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my friends. Not my family. I carried the truth alone, like a secret I was being punished for. I still went to work. Still smiled when spoken to. Still answered emails as if my entire sense of security hadn't been ripped away. At night, though the weight became unbearable, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, calculating what £50,000 meant in years of my life. How long it would take to rebuild. How many sacrifices I'd have to make again. But worse than the financial loss was the emotional violation. He didn't just steal my money. He stole my faith in my own judgment. Every memory felt contaminated. Even the good ones. Especially the good ones. I remember one night, weeks later, when I finally broke down, not over the money, but over something smaller. A song came on the radio. One he used to play when he cooked dinner. I stood in my kitchen, spoon in hand, and suddenly couldn't breathe. I slid down against the cabinet and cried so quietly I scared myself. That was the night I realized something else had been taken from me. My voice. I had been so consumed with surviving the aftermath that I hadn't noticed how small I'd become, how hesitant, how apologetic. I second-guessed every decision, even harmless ones. I stopped trusting my instincts, and that scared me more than being broke. I did report it, eventually. The police, the bank, forms, phone calls, endless explanations that felt like reopening a wound every time. They were polite, sympathetic, realistic. Most scams like this, they said, don't end with recovery. I nodded like I understood, like I accepted it. Inside, something shifted. Not anger. Not yet, something colder. That was when I stopped crying. Not because I was healed, but because I was empty. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I learned how to live with the absence of what I'd lost. I learned how to budget again, how to rebuild slowly. But I also learned something unexpected. I learned how much strength silence contains, because in that silence, I began listening to myself again. I noticed how my body reacted when something felt wrong. How my chest tightened when I thought about him, not from love, but from recognition. He hadn't overpowered me, he'd studied me. And suddenly, the shame began to loosen its grip. I started reading, not about revenge, about patterns, psychology, emotional manipulation. I saw him clearly for the first time, not as a monster, but as a man deeply afraid of being ordinary. He didn't want my money because he needed it. He wanted it because it represented what he could never build on his own. That realization changed everything, because once you see someone clearly, they lose their power over you, and that's when the quiet transformation began. I enrolled in courses I'd once postponed, took on freelance work I was scared to try before. I poured my frustration into rebuilding, not recklessly, but deliberately. I didn't announce my progress. I didn't post motivational quotes. I healed privately. There's a particular kind of strength that grows when no one is clapping for you. Months later, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. Just 2 words, "I'm sorry," no explanation, no accountability. Just a small, fragile attempt at easing guilt. I stared at that message for a long time. And for the first time since everything happened, I smiled, not because he was suffering, but because I wasn't. I didn't reply, "Some closures don't need conversation," but life wasn't finished teaching either of us lessons yet, because karma doesn't rush. It waits, and what came next was something he never planned for. There's a moment quiet, almost invisible, when the past finally loosens its grip on you. Not because you've forgotten it, but because it no longer gets to decide who you are. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. Please like this video, subscribe, and stay with me until the very end, because this part isn't about revenge the way people imagine it. It's about the kind of justice that arrives without noise and stays forever. After that message, I'm sorry, I didn't feel the rush I expected. No triumph, no anger, just clarity. I understood something then that had taken me months to reach. Regret doesn't always mean remorse. Sometimes it's simply the discomfort of consequences finally catching up. I went on with my life. Quietly, deliberately. I rebuilt my savings, slower than before, but smarter. Every pound felt heavier now, earned with sharper boundaries and a deeper respect for myself. I advanced at work. I said yes to opportunities I used to shrink away from. I trusted my instincts again, not blindly, but bravely. The woman I was becoming didn't announce her arrival. She just showed up every day. Then, one afternoon, nearly a year later, karma arrived, not with drama, but with information. A mutual acquaintance reached out. Casual conversation at first, then a pause, then hesitation. "Have you heard about him?" they asked. I hadn't, not really. I had trained myself not to search his name, not to wonder, not to reopen doors I had finally closed. But curiosity is human. So I listened. His new venture had collapsed. Investors vanished. Accounts frozen. Legal trouble small at first, then impossible to ignore. The same confidence that once felt reassuring had become reckless. The same charm had stopped working. People began asking questions, and suddenly, no one was answering his calls. I didn't feel joy when I heard this. I felt distance. Like watching a storm pass miles away, aware of its power, but no longer caught inside it. A few weeks later, I ran into him by accident, a cafe near my office. I was in line, distracted, thinking about nothing in particular. I heard my name spoken softly, uncertainly, like it didn't belong in his mouth anymore. I turned. He looked smaller, not physically but energetically. His shoulders slouched in a way they never used to. His eyes didn't hold confidence. They searched up for permission, for familiarity, for forgiveness he hadn't earned. We exchanged pleasantries, polite, careful, the kind people use when pretending the past doesn't exist between them. Then he said it. I didn't think you'd be doing so well. It wasn't meant as an insult. It slipped out unguarded, and that's when I understood the final truth. My success wasn't just unexpected to him. It was unsettling, because the version of me he created in his mind, the broken one, the desperate one, the woman who would never recover, was the only version that justified what he did. Standing in front of him, calm and whole, unraveled that story. He apologized properly this time. Or tried to. Long sentences, soft voice, eyes avoiding mine. He spoke about stress, about mistakes, about losing sleep. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I thanked him for the apology. And then I said nothing else. I didn't offer closure. I didn't offer absolution. I didn't offer friendship. I paid for my coffee and walked away. That was it. No confrontation. No raised voice. No final speech. Just absence. And in that absence, something remarkable happened. I felt light. Not vindicated. Not victorious. Free. The revenge I once imagined sharp, public, dramatic no longer interested me. Because I had discovered something far more powerful. I didn't need him to suffer. I needed myself to thrive, and I was. The money I lost? It taught me discernment. The trust that was broken? It taught me boundaries. The heartbreak? It taught me who I am when everything familiar disappears. I stopped seeing myself as a woman who was scammed. I saw myself as a woman who survived deception without becoming bitter. Who learned. Who rose. And as for him, karma didn't destroy him. It simply removed the illusions he depended on. That's how it usually works. Quietly, fairly, completely. Today, my life is fuller than it ever was when he stood beside me. Not because I proved anything to him, but because I reclaimed everything he tried to take out. My voice, my confidence, my future. If you're listening to this and carrying your own betrayal, your own loss, your own quiet suffering, please know this: healing doesn't always look dramatic. Justice doesn't always announce itself. And revenge doesn't always require action. Sometimes the most perfect revenge is becoming someone who no longer needs it.